First, we're going to have Pak Bambang Yudi. Pak Bambang Yudi is ready, I think. Okay, Pak Bambang Yudi is a professor in applied linguistics at English Department of English, Faculty of Letters, Universitas Negeri Malang. He earned his Ph.D. in linguistics and applied linguistics from the University of Melbourne, Australia. His research interests are in EFL writing, ICT and ELT, and English teacher professional development. Pak Bambang Yudi will deliver a presentation entitled The Trans Classroom Teacher Using ICT in ELT. Pak Bambang Yudi, the time is yours. Please unmute first, Pak Bambang Yudi. We cannot hear your voice.
Pak Yudi, can you hear me? Can you click unmute, I guess, because I cannot unmute you. I don't know why. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can
All
you
right.
hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, pretty clear. Time is yours, Bapak.
Can you see the PowerPoint already?
Yeah, yes, but it's pretty small. It's pretty small, I think.
You can use the slideshow, I guess, Pak Bambang Yudi.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah, I would like to present about trans classroom teacher, and I will divide my presentation into 3 parts. First is understanding the context, and then the second towards online ELT and what research shows, and then online teaching experience. This is the story of my own experience in online teaching of paragraph writing. Now let's go to the first part. Well, I think all of us have known that right now we have been moving from the Industry Revolutions 1.0 to 4.0. The big differences are on the use of the internet for everything. Yeah. Internet of anything will be the characteristics which is very special for Industry 4.0, where we are now in. Yeah. And then from this, we can see that from one type of industry to another, there is a kind of transitional space, which we can see from one part to another, and this is called liminal space. So the place in between of two things is called liminal space. Now, there are different actors. When we have a very young child, we can call her or him initiant, and then he or she is growing up under the guidance of an elder. In sport, we have amateur player, and then when they are having intense exercises, then they in the end becomes professional. And then for novice learner, then later when they keep learning, then they will become expert. For beginner, then later he or she becomes master. Yeah. So in between of these two identities, then we have liminal space, the place where we are moving to the direction of an ultimate goal. Now, in this context, then liminal space is going to one-way direction. Yeah. But when we go to our own context, now we have the two situations, face-to-face teaching and online teaching. And then in between of these two, we have liminal space. With the coming of the Industry 4.0, then a lot of teachers are moving toward the direction of online teaching, be it in the form of flipped learning and teaching, or in the form of blended learning, or purely online teaching. Yeah. Unlike the characteristics of this journey is that it is repetitive journey. We are moving from the directions of traditional teaching to digital teaching or online teaching, back and forth, again and again. Lois in 2008 called this journey as trans-classrooming, or the teachers in these activities are called trans-classroom teachers. Now, this moving from the old mode of teaching to the new mode of the teaching involve a kind of various feeling. Some teachers are unsure or they feel uncomfortable toward the new identity, but then they also feel excited at the same time. Yeah. And they are willing to go forward and to see what is the feel of teaching in online. Yeah. Now, does the online teaching affect students' learning? That's another thing that we have to see. Then, if we in the traditional teaching, we have mastered the skills and the arts of teaching, and also measuring the achievement of the students, and then we will be sure that the students can have the learning outcomes. But what about in online teaching? So we still need to develop more methodologically, theoretically, and pedagogically. Now, also, now supposing that there is this situation is actually, I'm thinking of the situations when there is no COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah. But then later, if the things are going normal again, then we might go back to face-to-face teaching. Then after experiencing the online teaching, are we going to become the same persons? Yeah. But the issue is actually we should be able to feel in the same way. Either we are in traditional teaching and let alone in the online teaching, especially in the COVID situation like this. Now, so the different nature of the liminal space is that in the trans-classroom teacher space, then the zone to be traversed happen many times as teachers gain trans-classroom expertise. So we are moving to the expertise of being able to teach ELT online, but then we do not lose our ability when we go back to the traditional teaching. Now, so that's the issue of the liminal space of the trans-classroom teacher. Now we are going to see what research shows about teachers who are in liminal space. Are we ready? Now, I think in terms of the hardware, we have no problem. We have smartphones, we have laptops and PCs and other things. Yeah. In the areas of the applications, then we have a lot. Then we just need to add our own skill in a particular application and how we can use it in our teaching. Then in terms of the government is also ready because they have set out some rules and also criteria for having the online teaching, especially during the COVID-19 situation. And for this policy, Luki, I guess, will discuss more. And schools, yes, schools are forced or are encouraged to really tune in the teaching of English online. The students, of course, they are already ready, but in some cases, they also have problem in the choice of the application. Yeah, that's what I have experienced recently. The teachers, most of the teachers are now encouraged to be able to feel at home when they are teaching online. Now let's see. Now ideally, all of this should be ready, yeah, so that the online teaching will be able to run very smoothly and effectively for the students' learning. Now, my study with my student shows that teachers are actually, most of them are familiar. Yeah. Later, I will show the summary of this. And so then we go to when teachers have the application of TPEC training for them, then they will be happy. But not all, yeah, we can. And then what about the self-efficacy of the teachers about technology? Many of the teachers are confident, yeah. So there is a correlation in this case. Let's see the summary of the study. For research one, out of 11 of 17 teachers are familiar with internet-based teaching of writing, but some of those who are unfamiliar intended to use internet to teach writing. Yeah. Secondary school teachers included ICT in their lesson plans, but after training using TPEC framework, they included more teachers included ICT in their lesson plans. Yeah. Although the increase is not that high, only 5 teachers. Yeah. And then we also see that self-efficacy is related to the use of ICT. So the more confident the teachers, the more likely they are to use ICT in ELT. So these are the summaries of the research. Now, I would like to share my own experience when suddenly we were asked to teach online because of the pandemic. Now, I experienced of becoming an online teacher from March to May, and before that, I taught my class in traditional way because it was paragraph writing. Then we had to meet students a lot and have the conference, have the direct feedback, and accompanying the process of writing and so on. But for this story, I would like to inform that we use two applications in this case. The first one is WhatsApp, and the second one is email, either Gmail or Yahoo Mail. Now, why we chose this? Because of the problem of connection. Yeah. Not all of the students could access, for example, Zoom or to be in the same time for the classroom. For example, when we use Google Classroom, then we have to be in a synchronous mode. So we decided to have this, but I tried to employ these tools as much as possible so that could be effective for teaching. And I follow 5 steps in this case: recognizing the ability, accepting the function of the apps, adapting, so the engaging the students, exploring and the teaching, and then advancing and the learning activities. Now, yeah, I know. I recognize that we can use WhatsApp and also email for learning and also for teaching. That's why I decided to use this. Yeah. And then we also know that the function of the WhatsApp is for communication and information sharing, image sharing, movie sharing, and so on. Yeah. And email is useful for sending text, links, images. Yeah. And by knowing this function, then we can use these two tools effectively. But then I developed and determined that the WhatsApp was used to assign the students the tasks, while email was used to assign the students to submit their writing. Yeah. So this is the third step, engaging the students in the use of the apps to learn to write paragraphs. So starting from 23rd of March, that I began my teaching of writing online. And then on Monday, March the 30th, then we have a lesson. Yeah. So I asked the students to write a comparison contrast essay. For this, I used an image designing poster and send it to the students. And I also put my photograph just to give the students a sense that I was present. Yeah. So it is not only the teacher presence which matters, but also teaching presence. Yeah. So teachers presence and teaching presence. Now, I also specify that they have to submit their work in my email. Especially I use Yahoo, and most of the students use Gmail. Yeah. Actually, I also have Gmail as my account, but I use that for official purposes. Now, the next task was also sent to their WhatsApp. Yeah. And also this is another example, that is writing definition paragraph. First, I assign the students to think of the adjective to be described or to be defined, and then in WhatsApp, I listed their choice, yeah, based on the students' preferences shown in the discussion group in WhatsApp. And then I also give feedback and exercises. So for example, I noticed some of the students, or many of the students still have a lot of grammar mistakes because they are still in the first year. And then I send this image to WhatsApp, and the students try to correct directly in WhatsApp group. And so there was discussion in WhatsApp group. Also, I showed not only the sentences, but also part of the paragraphs. And then still, basically, the students have to make the sentences better. Now, in addition to these exercises, that is writing comparison and contrast essay, and also definition paragraph and comparison and contrast paragraph, I also assigned the student to have journal writing for 5 sessions, because this is part of the lesson in the book. Journal writing is writing for communication. There is no feedback in the form of grammar correction, but the feedback will be in the genuine communication. Yeah. So first step was that I asked each student to propose topic, and there were 27 topics. And then I selected 15 topics, and the 15 topics were divided into 5 sessions. So each session had 3 topics. Yeah. From the 3 topics shown to the students, I asked the students to choose one. So this is the example of the how assignment is given in session 1. Yeah. So, but I reminded the students that when writing a journal, they could write more than 1 paragraph. This is different from paragraph writing. I usually ask them to write only 1 paragraph. Yeah. So 3 topics are my hobby, my favorite food, and a special skill that I have. I also put some funny pictures there so that the students were encouraged to think of a good topic for their sharing. And this is a sample paragraph of the students. Many of the students still write 1 paragraph, but there are also some students who write more than 1 paragraph. And the blue part at the bottom were my feedback, my responses, because this is in the form of dialogue. Then the students can see what that I have read their journal, and also I ask question in the end of my comment so that they can write more. Yeah. And the continuation of the journal of that topic. But for the next session, I move to the next topic. 3 topics, but they had to choose one: accident, comfortable place, and special gift. On and on until 5 sessions. Yeah. So basically, the way in giving the assignment was the same, but the topics were different. Yeah. The 4th and the 5th. Yeah. Yeah. So by having that, and in the end of the semester, I asked them to give comments on the application of the journal writing, and they appreciated the writing very much because that can encourage them to write. Now, from this we can have a conclusions of this presentation. First one is that the trans classroom teaching becomes the norm, especially when later, hopefully, and soon, COVID-19 situation is over, and then we go back to traditional teaching, but we will become, we will have the feeling that teaching online and teaching tradition in the traditional mode are just the same. Yeah. And then it is necessary that pedagogy relevant to trans classroom teachers' liminal space needs to be expanded. Now, in the article, I propose that we have to develop not only the pedagogical and content knowledge, but also technological and content knowledge. When we have an upgrading for teachers or kind of professional development activities. Now, new pedagogical elements should be developed, especially when they are connected to tools or technology. Then we will be able to apply the technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge framework in our teaching. Now, at the end of the semester, then I have a feeling that I'm no longer face-to-face classroom teacher because it was very intensive in 2 months of teaching online. Yeah. So that's the presentation, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bapak Bambang Yudi. It's very inspiring presentation. I think some terms are not really popular, like liminal space and trans classroom. Now we know those the definition of those terms. Thank you so much. Bapak Ibu, I remind you again, if you have some questions to ask, you can write down in the chat group. You can write down in the chat group, and we will discuss the questions and the answers later after all the three presentations. Thank you so much once again, Professor Bambang Yudi Cahyono. Now we will go to the second presentation by Ibu Luki Emiliya Hidayat. Ibu Luki is ready.
Yes, can you hear my voice?
Yeah, it's pretty clear. Let me read the biography first. Ibu Luki Emiliya Hidayat is an English teacher at SMKN 10 Malang. So SMK is a vocational high school in Indonesia. So she completed her master's at ELT program of Universitas Negeri Malang. She also participated in an enrichment program at Regional Language Center or RELC Singapore in 2016. Her main interests are in the areas of ESP, material development, and ICT in ELT. Ibu Luki will deliver her presentation entitled Distance Learning in Indonesian Schools, Current Policies and Sharing of ELT Practices. Ibu Luki, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Miss, for introducing me to this webinar. Yes, my name is Luki Emiliya Hidayat. As introduced before, I'm an English teacher in vocational high school in Malang, SMK Negeri 10 Malang, Indonesia. I've been teaching for 11 years in vocational schools. And today I'd like to talk about distance learning in Indonesian schools, the current policies and sharing of ELT practices. Can you see my PowerPoint, Miss?
No, can you please share it again?
Oh.
We cannot see the PowerPoint slides.
Okay, how about this one?
No, probably you can stop sharing and then start sharing again.
Make sure you have opened the file before you start
Yes.
sharing, Luki.
Yes. Okay, how about this? Still cannot see?
Still
We
cannot
cannot
see it.
see the
Okay, wait.
the PowerPoint is not on the screen yet.
You can probably, if you still have problem, you can probably send the file in the through WhatsApp or in the chat box, and then I can open it for you.
Okay. Bu Nur Hayati, are you connected to WhatsApp? I'm sending my file there.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
We have some questions for Pak Bambang Yudi already in the group chat. We're going to discuss it later after all the presentations.
A lot of questions already.
Yeah. I'm not really sure whether we have time to discuss all of the questions, but probably we will try to select and discuss some for each speakers.
Okay, it's already sent, Miss Nurhai.
Yes, the file is PPTM. Okay.
Yes.
The extension is. Let's see.
Okay, I actually sent two files. The one is PowerPoint, the other one is Word.
Okay.
Bapak Ibu, you can read the abstract of all the presentations in today's virtual seminar in the reminder we have sent you the reminder yesterday via WhatsApp and email. So to get the idea of what the speakers are going to talk about, you can try to check the abstract again.
Can you see the screen
Okay,
already?
now we can see it.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yes, thank
Okay.
you. All right, so I already introduced myself, and I would like to continue the presentation. So today I will talk about the distance learning in Indonesian schools, the current policies, and sharing of ELT practices. Okay, but before that, let's have a look about your insights, or maybe what do you feel when distance learning or emergency distance learning is extended. Please don't hide the next slide. Please, the next slide.
Okay, wait a second.
So this is a little bit polling in polef.com. You can go there and please type one word, preferably an adjective or one phrase, showing your feeling about how is teaching distance learning for you, when especially when it is extended since March into April and then April into May until now, and we still unsure about when will it be finished. Okay, I will check. Okay, only one sentence. Okay. Sorry, one word. Yeah, some said it is fun and yes. Okay, fun, challenging. All right. Exciting. Okay, nice. Boring sometimes. Okay. Remember, it's if you get bored, then your students will get bored too. Oh, somebody said it's August. You want August to be the comeback time to your schools. Okay, challenging, challenging. So most of you said it is challenging. Okay, complicated, emphasize. Okay, the preparation is a little bit challenging. Okay, flexible. Okay, flexible. All right. Okay. Exciting, complicated. The internet connection. All right. So most of you here, okay, let's go back to the presentation here. Most of you here said that this is challenging. So this is not surprising. We know that this is not the usual or normal distance learning that we planned before, but this is emergency state. It means that everything goes unplanned. So even the teachers, the government, we don't know that we are expecting this distance learning this far. Okay, next slide, please. So let's have a look in the learning look like in upcoming academic year in 2020 and 2021. So in the world, globally, this is a global pandemic, and the UNESCO has counted that around 90% learning will be conducted online, distance learning, and only 9% will be able to learn face-to-face. And this also happened in Indonesia. Indonesia, 94%, they are still in the zone of red, yellow, and orange, and they are not allowed to open schools to have face-to-face learning. And only 6% of the areas in Indonesia, schools in Indonesia, are in the green zone that is allowed to have face-to-face normal learning. Okay. Meanwhile, the students, the parents, the teachers, on the contrary, they really hope to have face-to-face learning instead of distance learning. It's the orange bar here. The students, 72%, and then after that, the teachers and the parents, most of them, they really expected to have face-to-face learning instead of distance learning. Why? Do you want to know why? Let's go on to the next slide. So this source is from Kemendikbud, guidelines for organizing learning in the academic year. Yeah, bringing classroom to home, is it effective? Half of the teachers said this is effective only to reduce the viral disease spread. But they found out that this is much more challenging, like what you said before, yeah, in the polling just we had. So 80% of the teachers and also the students, the parents say that distance learning, online learning has such challenges. We have difficulties in devices, adequate devices unavailability, and then we have network limitations, communication or interaction difficulties. So those are the challenges during this emergency distance learning. Okay, let's go on to the next slide, please. Okay, but in fact, although 94% of the teachers and schools doing distance learning, teachers practicing distance learning, most of them, 90%, but only 2/3 of them, 67% teachers, utilize the LMS, the learning management system, to help them manage their classroom online. And only 1/3 of the teachers taking online CPD to improve their ICT competence to support their distance learning. So this is quite on the contrary and contrast. Yeah. Okay, next please. Yeah. Okay. Right, so the teacher's role. We should remember that the teacher's role in distance learning, according to, yes, that I read in Dirjen Kritika Kemendikbud and also these two researchers, that the teacher's role during this distance learning is that one of it is they become resource provider, in which the teachers, they prepare and share instructional resources, materials to their peer teachers and also to their students. And then they also act as a facilitator. They offer support and advice and also provide necessary scaffolding and support the students to complete the task. And teachers also encourage students to take control of their own learning. And then teachers should monitor progress and encourage the students to solve the problem and show the way how instead of giving the way. And teachers also act as social supporter. We know that now we adjust to emergency distance learning. So it is important to focus on communicating care to our students in order to support their social and emotional well-being. Who knows that 10 years later from now, when our students already grow up somewhere, become somebody, they probably will not remember about the competence, the lesson we gave, but they will most likely remember about the caring of the adults around them, from the teacher, from their parents, and so on, and from their society. Okay. So when teachers already had this, their functions as resource provider, facilitator, and social supporter, it becomes a positive attributes that can form a sense of learning community sense of belonging, and eventually this will promote student academic engagement. Okay. Next, please. Right.
Ya, Jonda.
To adapt and adopt to this situation. Sorry, I heard something else.
Bu Rahmati, please unmute yourself.
Sorry, I cannot.
Sorry, Bu Luki.
Okay.
Advertisement.
All right. So, in order to adapt and adopt to the current situations, the emergency distance learning, the government here has released some learning guide for teachers in Bahasa Indonesia, like panduan, buku pedoman. So, the learning guide for teachers released by the Kemdikbud, it should be done by the teachers. It is a guide for the teachers during school shutdowns and the COVID-19 pandemic with the spirit of Merdeka Belajar, freedom of learning. So our new minister, the education minister, he promotes Merdeka Belajar. He thinks that this is more effective, that the teacher do something that is more efficient for the teaching result instead of doing administrative works. Okay, and what are in the learning guide? The key principles for the teachers during this emergency distance learning is that teachers should keep the students' well-being. Teachers reduce the stress and anxiety of the students in giving activities. And also don't forget to be realistic in setting goals and also in assessing. And then the fundamentals in design and implementation, teachers should consider about what is the content that you would like to include in your activities, in your learning. Then go back again, it should be referred to the key principles. It should concern about students' well-being and should be realistic. And you have to analyze who are your students. You should know the profiles of your students, the condition, maybe their availability to resources and tools, and the urgency. Okay, maybe your place is in orange zone, red zone, or even black zone. So we know the urgency in what situation and for what kind of students, and how we can design and implement this into a real situation of emergency distance learning. Next slide, please, Ms. Nurhai. Okay, so first, okay, please stop. Not showing it all. Okay, the first, teachers should do teacher self-reflection. This is the recommendation and guidelines from the Ketika Kemendikbud. Self-reflection first. Teachers should know their weaknesses, and also challenges. And after that, they try to develop personal and professional values. Of course, you are not alone here because 90% of your peers, teachers, your colleagues have the same thing to do. Okay, and then you should get peer support. Your colleagues, you seek professional, emotional, and technical support from your colleagues in school. Thank God we don't we not only have English teachers, we also have IT teachers, we also have counseling teachers, we also have religion teachers. Yeah, so we can seek professional, emotional, and technical support from them to help us to conduct this distance learning. Okay, and also the resources. Let's think about the resources that you select, the technology platform or tool, and how to adapt the materials. Again, you have to know your condition, your situation of the students around you. Are they accessible to this platform or not? Okay, and next, lesson planning. After that, you go to plan the lesson. how to set the learning goal. The learning goal itself, it should assist students through crisis to overcome their fear and anxiety during this crisis. And then followed by feedback. Okay, after you create a lesson plan, you should give feedback, reflection, check other peers' lesson plan, okay, whether your lesson plan already support your students mentally and emotionally, because this is the difficult times to keep the while you are keeping to making them engaged and motivated while overcoming their fear and anxiety during this crisis. And then in assessment, again, you have to refer to the learning goal. Okay, and finally, next please. Yeah, finally we go to the lesson plan. This is very identical to teachers. We should create lesson plan, and this time with the spirit of Merdeka Belajar, freedom of learning, which is promoted by our Minister of Education. Okay, it contains three principles actually. The first is efficiency. When you create a lesson plan, it should be efficient in time and energy. So that's why the minister said this is merdeka, or you have freedom, yeah, as long as you save time and save your energy during this crisis. And you should concern about the effectiveness in achieving the goal. And also it should be student oriented, focused in students' readiness in learning, their needs and their urgency at the time. Okay. After the principles, you have the components. Okay, next please. The components that should be included in your lesson plan, of course, these main three should be mentioned in your lesson plan, and the minister also promote one paper lesson plan to make sure that this is efficient and effective enough, save the teacher's energy to make the lesson plan. So the first component is learning goal. Still the same that we know it should contain the ABCD, the audience, the students, and then the behavior that we would like to achieve, the condition, in what condition and in what degree. Or maybe the C here can be replaced with the content. And then the learning activities itself, depending on what skill in ELT that we would like to focus on, the pre-activity, the main activity, and the post-activity. And then finally, the learning assessment. Again, it should refer to the learning goal itself, that it should be focused to students, what they need in this time. Okay, next please. Yes, in doing this, practicing this distance learning, of course, you need the help of these tools, this technology, the media, and learning resources. First, you have to determine, choose, select which LMS here. The LMS here already has their household names, making this household names like Edmodo, Google Classroom. I see that most teachers in Indonesia use Google Classroom and Edmodo and Kuiper, while our government also prepare an LMS, Siajar by Simolek. Okay, you can search in Google, or maybe you can log in and sign up to be a member of Simolek teachers community here. Okay, and after you decide which LMS, the house of your learning, okay, and then you get ready to fill your house, your LMS, with the learning content, with the learning content here. Okay, Miss, next. the learning content, whether this is synchronous or asynchronous. You can present to your classroom kinds of games or video conference to be synchronous, or you would like your students to study through e-module, and then you can have live chat. Okay. Sorry, my screen is covered. Okay. All right, so now let's do it. The lesson plan. How will the Merdeka Belajar lesson plan look like? Referring to the guidelines from the Kemendikbud, the ministry. Okay, next please. And Ms. Nurhai, maybe you can open my Word file.
Okay, wait a second. Let me see.
Ibu Luki, 5 minutes left.
Yeah, can you see it, Luki?
Yes, okay, thank you. I can see it. Yeah, so this is only some ideas and sharing of practices done by me and my colleagues at school, my community. Don't think that this is the correct one, so you can elaborate and be creative. So Merdeka Belajar here, the freedom of learning, it means so that the teacher can be more creative and do things that they like and they need, as long as the students will really like or maybe make use of their lesson plan. Okay. So first you have to mention about your identity, your school, the competence that you would like to focus, and for which grade or semester, the time allotment. Okay. First component, I tried to put the 3 components mentioned before, the learning goal, the ABCD to this. Okay, students can create an announcement in form of e-flyer about current issues. Maybe some of you think that this is too high expectation for your students, or maybe this is too low expectation for your students. You can adapt the learning goal or create your own learning goal according to the condition and the needs and the resources of your students. Okay, after that, the learning activity, starting with pre-learning. Okay, so here I try to include the ICT too. Okay, some apps I use here that is frequently used by me and some of my friends. In the pre-learning, to do brainstorming and to activate their prior knowledge before we start the learning. You can use a Kahoot quiz. Here I use Kahoot quiz about COVID-19. Okay, and don't forget to provide the time allotments and also attachment related to this content. Okay, after students doing Kahoot quiz, and then the teacher can analyze the results. After this, I will also show you the screenshots. Yeah. After doing some Kahoot quiz, teacher leads interactive discussion in live chat room using WhatsApp group. Yeah, we have a classroom WhatsApp group where we can do interactive discussion. There we can show quiz results and explains the learning goal and introduce the material for that day. Okay, after that we go on to the main learning activities. First, students watch a learning video. Maybe here you want to share a video about that material in Edpuzzle. Why do I choose Edpuzzle? Because I can take videos, learning videos from many sources, Khan Academy, from TED Education, from YouTube, etc. Or maybe from me myself, uploaded in YouTube, and then I insert some questions to be answered by the students to check their activity, to check their comprehension to the materials. Okay, after that, the students read some announcement in Padlet. Okay, so I think most of you already familiar with Padlet. You can display works or assignments, students' results of works there. So it's like a gallery. Okay, and in Padlet, yes, yes.
2 minutes left.
Oh,
I'm so
2 minutes
sorry.
left. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And to the activities in Padlet, there you can also insert not only pictures but also files and links. Okay. After that, teacher reviews students' activity results using WhatsApp group, and you do a quiz about announcement in Quizlet or maybe Google form. Students discuss the quiz answer and teachers give feedback in WhatsApp group. The post-learning now. The post-learning, okay, the teacher invites students to draw conclusion about the topic and teacher makes confirmation in WhatsApp group. So this is interactive. You don't let them make the conclusion by themselves. You have to give feedback to and encourage them to make conclusion. In WhatsApp group chat room, you explain the group assignment to make announcements. So this is already go to the objectives. So to the final project, they have to make an announcement, a flyer about current issues using Canva. Canva, after this, I will show the screenshot again. Okay, and then finally students display their works in Padlet and receive feedbacks from their peers and also teachers. Then teacher asks students to do reflection and give them activities to prepare for the next session by watching TVRI program. So you can see here that I include so many apps, technologies here, synchronous or asynchronous as your media. This is not a muscle that you have to use all, or maybe you think that the more apps I use, it is the better. Not always like that. So in this lesson plan, I just would like to show you that we can have variation in giving activities through apps, because we don't know which activities, which apps that attract the students more, which one will show their engagement the most. Okay, so you can choose which one is suitable to your conditions again and the resource again. Okay, scroll down. Some of the the assessment. You have the quiz and also the e-flyer, the announcement. Okay, so this is the Kahoot that I use for the pre-learning, pre-activity. Okay, then scroll again, scroll down, general questions and guided question. Okay, and this puzzle video, there you can show your materials about what is an announcement look like, how is the process to make it, what are the components should be there in an announcement. You can insert questions to check their activities. Okay, and then go down again. Yes, okay, this is still a puzzle. Okay, go down again. This is the Padlet. Okay, you give activities there in Padlet and show their works there. So these are the results of previous class activities. Okay, you can show to your students to make sure they understand what you want. Okay, this is in Quizlet if you want to give a quiz in Quizlet. Okay, and then next. Yeah, so about making announcement e-flyer using Canva. This is the objective, that the student should be able to write a simple announcement in form of e-flyer. Okay, they can use Canva or Fancage or any other apps. So I choose Canva here, and because students or teachers who cannot design, they still can be designers. So everyone can design here. We know that students like to put pictures and text and combine it. So this is a sample for their books too. Okay, so go back to the PowerPoint again, Miss.
Okay. Let's see.
Excuse me, can you directly come to the conclusion?
Yes.
Because
okay.
we still have another
Yeah,
presentation, I'm so sorry.
All right. So we come to the end of the PowerPoint that
Yeah.
the message of from the minister, I think. Yeah. So I just quote from what has the minister said, Pak Nadiem, the Mas Menteri. Okay, he said that technology is merely a tool. It is committed, not committed, thoughtful, caring, and determined, caring, and a thoughtful teacher who makes impact and differences in students' distance learning experience. Okay, so I think that's the conclusion. No matter what your technology you use in classroom, it's you, the teacher, who will make the impact and differences. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so sorry, Bapak Ibu. I had a problem with my laptop screen. It suddenly went blank, and now I'm using this laptop. Thank you so much, Bu Luki. It's a very feasible and applicable, I think, the sharing of the practices. Thank you so much. Now we'll go to the third presentation by Dr. Scott Balfin. Is Dr. Scott Balfin ready here? Yeah. Let me read the brief CV. So Dr. Scott Balfin is a senior lecturer in the Faculty of Education at Monash University. His research and teaching interests are in English education and the sociology of educational technologies. And he's currently working on project examining the influence of platform technologies on L1 teachers' digital work and the role of memory and collective history on professional identity. Dr. Scott Balfin will deliver his speech entitled, his presentation entitled Literacy Teaching in the Machine, Teachers' Work and Commercial Education Platforms. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear the presentation from Dr. Scott Balfin. Okay, Mr. Scott, time is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. It's very nice to be here today and to be involved in such an interesting seminar. Before I begin, I just want to express my appreciation to all of the organisers for today's seminar from the ELT Research Group and the Department of English in the Faculty of Letters at the University. It's very interesting to see so many different people joining the seminar from all different places. It's very interesting to see such interest and engagement with such an important issue. So that's, I think it's very interesting to me to see that happening from Australia for so much interest in the region where you are. So congratulations to the organisers for putting on such an interesting event. I want to say thank you to my co-speakers as well and for their presentations. It's been very interesting to hear from them. We do have some interesting connections from the university there to Monash. Some of you have already mentioned that connection, so I've noticed some folks in the seminar today whose names are familiar to me from some perhaps their time at Monash in the past. So that's great. I'm going to share my slides now. Just give me 1 minute. I hope that everyone can see those slides. Perhaps if
Yeah.
you can, or yep, great, perfect. So my presentation today draws on some research that I've been doing in the last couple of years related to trying to understand how English teachers or literacy teachers' work is shaped by their involvement and their use of platform technologies. And of course, the COVID-19 situation has meant that many schools and many teachers have been pushed much harder than they normally would have been to embrace various forms of online learning. But even before the COVID-19 situation, of course, schools in all parts of the world have been embracing and taking up various kinds of commercial educational platforms. And so we've got, I think, a very interesting situation on our hands at the moment all around the world, where we can take some time to think about not just the typical questions that we tend to ask as teachers and educators, questions like, are students learning? But also questions about teachers' work and how that's changing in relation to the kinds of pressures and difficulties that they're facing. So, for example, I've noticed that many of the questions that have come up on the chat forum today are related to questions of equity and resources. And so I think that's a very important question to ask and not to lose sight of. But today, in my presentation, I'd like to address four main areas. I want to begin by talking about some context that I think is very important for understanding L1 or English teachers or literacy teachers' work in and with the digital. I'd like to then think about or make an argument, I guess, about how this context, the wider context of our work, tends to shape the questions that we ask about technology and our work. And it also tends to mean that we don't ask other kinds of questions, which I think are also very important and which I will propose to all of us that we should be asking more. And then I want to finish with some reflections on what those contexts and questions might mean for this idea of a knowledge project for English and literacy teaching into the future, and finish with a recent example from a research project to hopefully illustrate the importance of asking different kinds of questions. So my presentation today really comes from a broader sociological and critical perspective, and not only a classroom or pedagogical perspective, although I think, of course, both those perspectives are important. So I want to briefly talk about, as I said, some context for English teachers and L1 teachers' work at the moment. Now, I should say that these contexts are, I think, influencing different parts of the world differently, but I'm hoping that you'll be able to recognise some of these trends and issues in your own context. The first is what I call a global technologising imperative. And the second is related to that, but is what I call a global standardising imperative. Let me give some quick examples. A global technologising imperative, what I mean by that really is that across the world we have many influences that tend to create an environment where teachers feel the need to take up various technologies. Now, sometimes those contexts are very real, like we have now in the COVID-19 situation, where teachers and school systems are compelled to take up technologies. But before the pandemic and after the pandemic, we will also have a situation where teachers are feeling pressured and feeling encouraged for positive and for perhaps less than positive ways, that technologies are an important part of their teaching, and they really need to engage with technologies in a broader and more detailed way. Of course, Google Classroom is a good example of a technology platform that's created by the Google Corporation, and is a commercial educational platform that is being taken up in many schools around the world. So many millions of students and many hundreds of thousands of teachers work with the Google Classroom platform to do their work. And often teachers and schools have partnered with Google because they don't want to be left behind. They want to appear current and cutting edge. And of course, the platform does provide some useful tools to enable their work. But examples like Google Classroom and many other apps that have been discussed today and that we could also mention do create an environment where teachers feel a technologizing imperative, or the need to become more technologically savvy and competent. On the screen now is a quote from a UNESCO report now from some time ago, but it will give you some example of the way in which not just commercial providers like Google, but also non-government or intergovernment organizations like UNESCO help to create an environment where teachers feel that it's important to technologize. I don't know if someone's put a sad face on the slide there or not. Maybe you disagree with this UNESCO comment, but we can see the way in which UNESCO believes that ICT applications are available to help meet different kinds of challenges into the future. Things like the reduction of the digital divide or disparities in access to knowledge, providing opportunities for educational attainment. We might ask critical questions about how widespread these kinds of benefits might actually be. As I indicated before, some of the chat questions indicated that many of you are working or teaching in environments where students don't necessarily have access to these kinds of technologies. But nonetheless, here is an example again of what I call a global technologizing imperative, where there's pressure created on teachers and schools to take up technologies because there's important reasons to do so. Here's just another example. Many of you will be familiar with the Kahoot platform. I think that we'll be using it later on in the session today. Images like this of happy children learning in classrooms, being passionate and engaged, also tend to create a technologizing imperative where teachers feel as if they don't use the latest technology, then perhaps their students won't be as engaged and as happy as the ones in these kinds of advertisements. Risby and Lingard, two education policy researchers that many of you may be familiar with, call these kinds of images and reports cajoling discourses. That is, they say that organisations such as the OECD, the EU, APEC or UNESCO and the World Bank have become major sites for the organisation of knowledge about education, and have, because of that, created a cajoling discourse of imperatives of the global economy for education. So discourses that cajole or encourage or push or hint at teachers to take up these technologies and devices are very common now. The second context for thinking about, I think, thinking critically about L1 and English teachers' work is what I call a global standardizing imperative. Now, I'm going to give a couple of examples from Australia here, but you may be familiar with examples from your own context. On the screen at the moment is a document that was published some time ago in Australia by a the National Institute for Teaching and School Leadership. Now, this is a regulatory body that promotes standards for teachers and their conduct of their work, and also standards for school leadership. Now, documents like this provide or attempt to standardize teachers' practices across different contexts and attempt to create a discourse of standardization around teachers' practice. that I think are both useful and quite problematic. You may, of course, be familiar with standards attempts or standardizing attempts in your own contexts that are similar. Here's another brief example from the Australian curriculum in Australia. We have a national curriculum in Australia, and it does some of the same standardizing work that teacher standards documents and frameworks do. So this is a screenshot example of the way in which the curriculum attempts to, of course, standardize teacher curriculum and practice across Australia. Now, of course, there are many benefits to national curriculums and standardizing efforts, but we also might ask questions, critical questions about the role of local contexts and of teacher judgment in creating curriculum and learning programs to meet the needs of students in local situations. So just briefly to summarize, these two contexts for contemporary L1 and English teaching do shape strongly the work of teachers. So we have global tech companies, IGOs, NGOs and SNOs, this intergovernmental organisations, non-government organisations, and supranational organisations like the World Bank, UNESCO and those others that I've mentioned tend to take up the discourses of global tech companies and create an environment where teachers and schools feel that taking up technologies is an imperative. Those discourses tend to filter down into schools and teacher education institutions and into curriculum initiatives. We also have that global standardizing imperative where there is a concerted effort on the part of international and national groups to standardize, to take up what we call standards-based reforms. These include standardized curriculum and assessment. Some of you, many of you will be familiar with the PISA tests. For example, in Australia, we have a standardized testing regime called the NAPLAN. I'm sure that there are these examples in your own context. Teacher performance standards, standardization of teacher education, and of course, standardized views about language and literacy teaching. The reason I want to emphasize these two contexts is because I think they create some problems for us when we're thinking about our work, ELT or language teaching, literacy teaching and technology. What they tend to do, I think, is encourage us to ask particular kinds of questions. And I'm going to call these common and generally useful questions. Here are some examples. So these imperatives that I've talked about tend to encourage teachers and researchers to ask questions like, what technology should I use here in my context? Of course, this is an important question, but as I will show or try to show, it's not the only important question. Other common and generally useful questions include, how do I use the technology that I have or that I might have my school purchase? And the final one is, how can I improve, how can technology improve my teaching? For example, how can it engage my students? How can it save me time? Or how can it make me feel more innovative and cutting edge? So these standardizing and technologizing imperatives, my argument is, they tend to encourage us to ask these kinds of questions, which are important, but I think ultimately quite limited. And let me indicate why I think that's the case. Well, one reason is because technologies, in fact, are, I would argue, not neutral tools. I don't want to create an argument between me and the Minister of Education in Indonesia, but my perspective is that technologies are, in fact, not really tools, or that we can create some problems for ourselves if we think of them only as neutral tools. One way to think differently about technologies, in fact, because they're often commercially designed products with commercial interests, that they will always have particular goals or ends in mind. And when we choose to use them, we also can't avoid taking up those motivations and goals that might have been packaged into the development of those technologies. Another way to think about this really is that any machine or tool shapes the activities or practices of those using that tool in ways that are really important for us to understand. If we take the example of a hammer, like I have on the screen there. Of course, a hammer can be used in many ways, but it also encourages the user to use the hammer in particular ways because the hammer has been designed for particular uses. So for example, it's very difficult to screw in a screw with a hammer, or it's very difficult to paint a fence with a hammer. There are some uses which that the hammer must be put to, and those uses are packaged into the design and the manufacture of the hammer. It's the same kind of challenge with the technological tools. They also have intentions and design aspects built in it that mean that some things are possible and other things are not possible, and that they shape our work and practices in particular ways. So if we take up this more critical perspective, we tend to ask different kinds of questions about technologies and our work. So here are some examples of critical, but I think much less common questions, but we probably should be asking much more. So instead of what technology should I use, I propose that the equally important question is why? Why should I use this technology? Or the question, what does this technology allow me to do that I can't do in some other way? How might the technology I'm using change my teaching? And are any changes helpful or unhelpful? I think, of course, when we're interested in educational equity and opportunity, we must also ask who benefits from the kinds of changes that the technologies we use might create. And do they create benefits for some students and perhaps not for others? And finally, what are the unintended consequences of any changes? And are we looking carefully enough at those unintended consequences? So these two types of questions I think are useful to reflect on in our work. And the argument I'm suggesting is that the context for our work, this technologizing and standardizing imperatives, they shape the kinds of questions that we can ask as teachers and educators and university professors. And it's important to think about other kinds of questions, or to think about the questions that these contexts don't encourage us to ask. Let me give you an example. Right at the moment, we're on Zoom. And on the screen, you will see a screenshot of a class I taught a couple of weeks ago with students at the university here. These students are learning to be English teachers in Australia. You can see that, in fact, they're holding up a piece of paper to the camera. I asked them a question: what Shakespeare plays did they study when they were at high school? And they've indicated on their pieces of paper the kinds of the text, the Shakespearean text that they played. My point in using this example, though, is also relevant to our example now. Zoom is a very useful technology and platform, but it also shapes the interactions that we have in quite particular ways that are very different from the environments that we are used to in language and literacy classrooms. For example, Zoom only allows really one person to talk at a time, because it detects a microphone signal and will switch the microphone input to the speaker who's the loudest. And so if you all unmuted your microphones right now, all 330 of you, then Zoom wouldn't be able to cope with the microphone inputs, and would focus on one or two of the loudest. And of course, in a classroom environment, we don't have this problem. When we're teaching languages or literacy or English in a classroom environment, we can engage in different kinds of discussion where it's possible to talk over one another, or to talk together, or to have multiple groups in the same place discussing and engaging in what I would call dialogic pedagogy. So here Zoom has particular, what we might call affordances or opportunities, and those tend to shape quite strongly the teaching we're able to do in those environments, for positive reasons and for negative. We won't worry about the last one because we have other things to talk about. So asking more critical questions about Zoom like I've suggested, what changes does Zoom help us to make? Are these changes beneficial, helpful, or unhelpful? Who benefits from those changes, and what are the unintended consequences that a platform like Zoom might introduce into our teaching? It's important to think about those questions as we think about our work and think about how we can do it better. So just a summary for this part of the presentation. I've argued that really we have an opportunity to think differently about what I will call the knowledge identity project of English and literacy teaching. So first of all, that begins by understanding and recognizing the importance of the intersection of those contexts that I've talked about, the standardizing imperative and a technologizing imperative. The second part of the argument really is that we need to take an understanding of that context and understand how it might shape a critical inquiry into the work we do as English and literacy teachers. And that is more than just asking questions about what kind of technology to use and how to use it better, but questions about how does the uptake of those technologies shape my disciplinary or knowledge background that I have as a language L1 or English teacher. So these are, I know, difficult questions, and they're questions that English and literacy and language teachers, I think, are not used to asking. It's much easier to ask a question like, what technology should I use and how can I do it better? But if we are serious about understanding the role of platforms in shaping L1 English or literacy or language teaching, then we need to be much more aware of the shaping role that platforms play on us as teachers, on our work, and on our students. So just a quick example of the kinds of research questions that might flow from this kind of argument that I'm proposing before we look at an example to finish. So these are questions I think that are important to ask and that are equally as valuable as questions about what technology we might use. So for example, what new forms of literate subjectivity for both teachers and students are shaped by the use of commercial educational software and platforms? So literate subjectivity is another way of thinking about the kind of students we would like to have graduate from our classes. What kinds of knowledge, skills, and identities are they forming in our classes? When we add technology and the digital into the mix, we also need to consider what kinds of literate subjectivities are being shaped by the commercial educational software and platforms that we use in our classrooms as well. The second point there, or the second set of questions, what does it mean to become the ideal literate knower in these new configurations of human and machine? So when we put humans and machines together, my argument is that the ideal literate knower or the ideal student becomes different or changes, and we need to consider how that might change. And finally, what are the implications for researchers and teacher educators when we think about these issues in this way, in this, if you like, knowledge and discipline way? How might we develop new approaches that encourage more critical orientations towards these kinds of increasingly dominant practices using platforms in schools and in universities? Okay, I realize that I'm going quite quickly here, but I don't want to hold you up. I know that it's Saturday. I'm so impressed that so many of you have logged into a seminar on Saturday. But I want to finish on an example of what I mean, something to provide a little bit more context about the approach that, that I'm proposing here. So this example comes from a recent research project where a colleague and I interviewed a range of teachers, secondary school English and language teachers, about their use of platforms and data in their English teaching. Now this brief example, this brief conversation and exchange is between three early career teachers, Lucy, Sam and Anton. Now Sam who's a female teacher, is in her 3rd year of teaching, and he currently works at a rural Catholic college, a secondary school in the country here in Victoria. Lucy and Anton are both 1st year teachers, so they graduated very recently and are teaching in suburban government high schools. Now, what I'm going to show you is a brief exchange between them in a focus group interview. Before I do that, let me just give a little bit of context. In the conversation, one of the early career teachers talks about this particular platform. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's called Literatu, and the school, or one of the schools that one of these teachers is working at, uses this to help to organise teachers' work and student learning, particularly in English. So in this brief exchange here, there's a couple of slides to give you a sense of the conversation. Lucy is explaining her use of the software platform Literatu. She says, our English team use the software platform a lot, and it makes our life significantly easier because you can put kids' marks next to each other and you can clearly monitor progress. Scott, that's me, the interviewer, says, can you talk us through that? Lucy responds, yep, it's an online marking program. It's the Literatu platform she's talking about. You can also run quizzes through it. You can do tests through it. And the way we use it is you just use it to upload rubrics. It makes marking quite easy to go through, and the kids can go through that process as well.
Excuse me, Scott?
Yes.
It's 5 minutes left.
Thank you very much. So here Lucy is describing the way in which the English staff use the platform. They can use it to set work for children, for students, and students can also upload their work, and the platform provides some analysis of their work and some comparison of the students' writing across time. Lucy continues, you sort of click on the box and it pops up with the curriculum and the criteria, and help you to generate rubrics as well. It's a massive time saver. But also you can, once you've got a class of results, you can put them side by side and look at the program, look at what went wrong. It picks out patterns, so specific areas the kids aren't doing well in. It does just do that analysis for you. Now in the focus group, Sam, who's a 3rd year teacher teaching at a different school, is agitated by Lucy's comments, and she says, what are you judging them on? I hate it already. She's talking about the platform. But okay, I think I hate it already. I can see how it saves time, but it would make me... She stops. Lucy says, well, you can still leave comments and everything on the student work, but it gives you some score out of 1. It's like a 0 point something, and you want it to be like 0.4 to demonstrate that the students are making progress. 0.4 is like the acceptable score. That's there's saying progress is being made. If you get a higher score, then it means significant progress. Here's a screenshot of what Lucy's talking about. So you can see on this side is representative of one piece of writing that students have done. On this side is a piece of writing that's taken place after the first piece. What the program does is evaluates students' texts and gives them a score on this particular framework here. As you can see, 0.40 here, the program indicates where students are achieving and the kinds of challenges that they might be having. So it's an automated program, if you like, and there's some discussion amongst these teachers about whether or not that's suitable or helpful or has unintended consequences. The final exchange between the teachers goes something like this. Anton says, I think if you're a good teacher, you should be able to pick up those trends anyway. You know, like if the kids, Lucy says, it's more about accountability, I think. Anton, you know, if they're not good at, say, the rubric was on a text response and the evidence they produced, Sam says, was crap, yeah, rubbish, then it's more of an ass-saving exercise than for teaching. you think? Lucy finally finishes by agreeing that the process of uploading assignments and of having this platform do the work is what she says a bit of an accountability thing. I think because there's this huge push at the moment to see progress and to be held accountable. But I think that data is mainly used for curriculum development or like professional development when people look at the school and for accountability for teachers. So Lucy's saying something like, well, it's not so useful to teachers. So just to finish, I want to make a couple of points about what might be going on in an example like this and how it might encourage us to think about the argument or different questions that I made at the beginning of the presentation. I apologize if I go a couple of minutes over. So it seems to me that a couple of points might be made here about what these young teachers are grappling with and how they're understanding how their work is being shaped or mediated by the platform in ways that are both helpful and unhelpful. So there's a sense that the construction of English and literacy teaching is being made with reference to accountability and performance measures. So rather than thinking about English and literacy as something that is teacher-directed or that is dialogic in its approach, we get a construction of a particular kind of English learning that's got major reference to accountability and performance measures. There's a focus on scores and of quantifiable measures of performance rather than, say, an authentic engagement with the student's writing. There's a taking up of discourses of convenience. You would have noticed that Lucy talks about the convenience that the platform provides rather than, say, the opportunities it provides for relational development with students. There's a teleos, what I would call a teleos, or if you like, a projection into the future of literacy and English learning as constructed by the technologies around standards and outcomes, rather than, say, for example, relationships or personal achievement. And of course, we have early career teachers here negotiating a set of competing agendas that are forming and constructing their professional identities. But those are being constructed in relation to what I've described as standards-based reforms and a technologising imperative, rather than, say, a level of critical professionalism where they feel empowered themselves to make choices about how students are achieving or not achieving. So in this environment, we've got, I think, a set of implications that are, I think, very important for us to deal with. So just to finish, we have learning management systems that become much more than administrative systems. In effect, they become what I would call a literacy management system that shapes a particular kind of literate identity and teacher views about what counts as literacy. So, for example, here literacy becomes a score, a numerical score, rather than something that's authentically about language development and achievement. So Holloway and Brass, who are some really interesting researchers, I would encourage people to look them up if you're interested in this kind of argument, that we as educators really need to consider what might be gained or lost as new languages, numbers and technologies of education reform, constitute new pathways to becoming what they call marketized teachers, managed teachers and performative teachers. So just to finish, these questions again are the ones that I would encourage us to be asking, as well as the questions that we're often normally used to asking. Why should I use this? How does it allow me to do something I haven't been able to do before? How might it change my teaching? Are those changes useful or helpful? Who benefits from those changes? And what are the unintended consequences that we might need to consider? So thank you for listening. I hope that's been useful, and I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Scott Balfin. I think now most of us starts to inquire more critically about the digital tools that we are using all this time. Thank you so much for Dr. Scott Balfin and all the other presenters. Oh, wait, let me show my face. Okay, there. Ladies and gentlemen, now we come to the question and answer session. The host, Ibu Nurhai, will show us the list of questions and the selected questions to be discussed in this session. Ibu Nurhai, could you please?
Yes.
Show us the
Ramati, can you hear
questions?
me?
Yes.
Yes. Wait a second. We've got a lot of questions. Let me see. Oh yeah. Wow. I've been working hard copying this. So I think we have chosen one question for each speaker, and then you can probably choose 2 questions, or I don't know, depending on the time for all speakers. Can you see the screen now? Bu Rahmati?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we can see it pretty clear.
Oh, wait. Oh, this one. Yeah, we can ask this one to Pak Bambang Yudi. A lot of questions to Pak Bambang Yudi, and he has already answered a lot as well in the chat box. This one can be directed to Pak Bambang Yudi from Bu Istu. She's the first one who asked question in the chat box.
Which number? Number 1?
Number 1.
Number 1.
Yeah, maybe.
So as teachers,
Bu Rahmati can also read the question.
yeah, it's from Ibu Istu Handayani from SMKN 7 Malang. As teachers' duty is not only transferring the knowledge, but also instilling good characters, how can we manage this in online teaching? Thank you. Pak Bambang Yudi want to answer?
Is that for me? Okay. Thank you very much. I also have addressed that question in the chat box. Basically, it is not enough for us to be only technologically applied, but we need also to be personally nice and personally polite too. Yeah. So we need to think that when giving the students assignment or task, we should think that we are not only doing our jobs as teachers or educators, but we need to have the spirits of helping them, helping the students learn and to be better in their education and in their life. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Pak Bambang Yudi. I think we can go to the second speaker, Bu Nurhai. If we still have time, we're going to go back to Pak Bambang Yudi again later.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Pak Bambang Yudi. I'm so sorry, so many questions, but we cannot discuss all of this because we have very limited time. Ibu Nurhai?
Yes, I think Luki is already unmuted, and she can address the second question, and you can probably read the question.
Okay.
Bu Rahmati can probably read the question first, so that everyone is aware that we're discussing that.
Yeah, so this question is from Pak Brahmi Biantoro from UMM. The question is, I see that you use a lot of platforms for your teaching. My question, how do you avoid being overwhelmed in making or managing them? Also, did your students feel overwhelmed as well while using many applications or platforms? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question, Mr. Pak Brahmi Biantoro. Yeah, so in my lesson plan model, I include so many platforms or apps. I already explained in my presentation that there is only some ideas. You cannot or you shouldn't choose or use all of them. So for example, in the pre-learning, I use 2 activities, 2 apps, and then in the main activities, I use more 3 apps maybe. So actually, you cannot do all. So there is a kind of ideas. You can select in the pre-learning, maybe you can choose one activity which meets the needs or maybe suitable to the resources of your students. And also, being overwhelmed by the platform, yes, so we should do a kind of survey to small talks to our students, so we can know about their access to their tools, internet, or everything. If they are not, they don't have access to internet, we can use TVRI. They already collaborate with Netflix to show world-class documentary that you can use to initiate learning. So the the lesson plan, it is only a model. You may be creative and choose which one suitable for you and for your students. The lesson plan only showed that you can use various apps for your learning activities, because we don't know which apps will be suitable, which apps that will be liked most by our students, something like that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we need to choose which apps is the most suitable for that particular material and activities. Yeah, thank you so much, Ibu Luki. The next question for the third presenter, Scott, from Levi Novianti from IAIN Curup Bengkulu.
Yeah, do you want me to read it?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
The question, please tell us again about new teachers' professionalism on this, because she's writing a dissertation on it.
Yeah, before I answer that question, let me just say something about the other two questions very briefly. I agree with what the speakers have said. I would only add that instilling a good character is, I think, a really interesting idea. And one way I think that we can do that is to help our students become more critical of the things that they're doing in the online space. So being kind and being nice and being supportive, I think, is very important. But one way in which I think it's equally important is to help students become more engaged and more critical of the things that they're doing online. The second question about the use of different platforms, I think, is a very important one too. My approach would be to talk to students about what is most useful for them and what they can access. There's been a lot of questions in the chat about equity. Again, I mentioned that in my presentation about, well, my students can't access some technologies. They live in poor areas, this kind of thing. I would think that can seem like a big barrier to doing work with students, but there are always challenges, and I think the best way forward with that problem is to find a technology platform that works for the students that you're working with. If that's WhatsApp, if that's text messages, if that's a phone, or if it's high-end video on Zoom, it doesn't matter. If you're thinking about your students' needs and where they're coming from and where they're starting from, I think that's always a good place to begin. The question about new professionalism is related to this question of, if you like, of the kind of teachers we need and the kinds of skills we need teachers to have in the digital environment. So there is a strand of research that has looked at the way teachers have become deprofessionalized in these kind of environments. So the example I gave of these young teachers in this focus group worrying about or talking about how the platform has taken some of their responsibility away, I think is a good example where teachers' judgments about students' work are more and more being made by the platforms and AI or data rather than the teachers. So in an environment where teachers have less control or less opportunity to make professional decisions or to use their expertise to decide on their students' achievement, those environments tend to what we call deprofessionalize teachers. And so this idea of new teacher professionalism is really linked to that. We have to resist, I think, the way in which some platforms and some digital media deprofessionalize teachers, and look for ways that we can help teachers to be more confident and more critical about their work and have opportunities to exercise their judgment.
Okay, thank you so much. So we have to resist the way digital platforms deprofessionalized our profession as a teacher. Thank you so much, Scott. Now let's have one question for all the speakers from Kartika Ajeng from SMKN 12 Malang. There are two questions actually from the same person. The first question, how we deal with the authenticity issues dealing with students' work in distance learning. The first question first, probably Pak Bambang Yudi wants to say something about this.
Yeah, basically to increase authenticity and to avoid students cheating, then I usually assign the students to write or to choose topics which are personally context or locally based context. Yeah. So then they will not just able to copy and paste from the internet, but they have to develop their own ideas. Also, I have usually asked the students to start thinking of the topic in the class and also to make an outline in the class so that we will know from the beginning that this is what the students have planned. So I do not allow the students to change titles all the way through, because when they change, the chance is that they will reduce their time. Then the tendency to do or to plagiarize from other people's work is higher. So that is why I control from the beginning and the process of writing. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. So contextualized topic, and they have to show every step of the writing process, yeah, Pak, yeah, from the beginning.
Exactly.
Even though we're not in face-to-face classroom, but we can do it in digital class. Thank you so much. Ibu Luki, you want to say something regarding this question?
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So I think the key is in communication, how we communicate a student's work result to them. If we find any copies or authenticity issues, we can communicate so the students know that we notice their works really carefully, and then we should know our students well by keeping good interaction through WhatsApp group chat, or maybe a comment column in the LMS. So you really know how your students like, and your students also know that they you know them. So it will prevent them to do some kind of issues. And then your second question to Kartika Ajeng, the school has a policy that the students must pass the semester, and should we neglect their performance in previous semester and whether they join the learning or not? So I think we should do the current learning. So what competence that you would like to teach now, you should include the basic competence that is needed to be taught now, so in different degrees. So I think you can do it in pre-learning, like a review, or maybe kind of giving summaries or preview of the past activities that will be needed in this current teaching. Okay, so I think that's all from me.
Yeah, thank you. So to emphasize, to deal with the authenticity issues, you think that we need to show the students that they are being monitored from the beginning of the process, right? Okay, thank you, Ibu Luki. Scott, do you want to say something to answer the question?
Just maybe quickly. I think Bambang Yudi's suggestion is a very good one, and it tends to be the approach I take. I think you can avoid or enhance authenticity issues when the tasks we set for students are real tasks that require them to think for themselves and create texts that they can't find anywhere else. And you can only do that if you know your students very well, and if you're creating activities for them which are well targeted and appropriately leveled. The other example, or the other thing I would say, is that It's also possible to encourage students to use a material from online in their analysis. So for example, when I was teaching high school many years ago, I would often, I know that students would go online to look for essays they can copy. So instead of pretending that I didn't know this, or that, or I would tell them to, part of the writing process was for students to go online and to find maybe 3 examples of essays online for the topic. Maybe they were studying Macbeth or something, a Shakespeare play. I would ask them to go and find 3 Macbeth essays, cheating essays, okay? And
Oh, okay.
they would have to copy and paste these essays into a document, and then provide an analysis of the effective and non-effective aspects of the essays they had found online. And then to write their own essay after they had done some analysis of the material they had found online. So it enabled me to let students know that I knew they might cheat, but instead of pretending that it wouldn't happen, I asked them to use those materials in their own learning. So again, it's about, I think, a task design and about the way that we approach thinking about the resources that are available to students, and the way we, the personal engagement with the activity, I think, is most important.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a nice idea. So we get the ideas from the speakers here that, one, it's better to use contextualized topic. If no, then we can use common topic, but let them show us the cheat text, or yeah, you can design any other task types, and then we let them know that we monitor the process from the beginning. Thank you so much for all the speakers. I'm so sorry again because of the limited time. It's already 11